The leaseholder of Brisbane's former floating restaurant site at Milton still wants to reopen the venue despite it once again being damaged by floods, as the debate about which level of government should act over the site reignites. Key points. The Drift restaurant has been vacant since it was damaged in the 2011 floods. The Drift restaurant has been vacant since it was damaged in the 2011 floods. Brisbane's Lord Mayor wants the state government to step in to end the debacle. Brisbane's Lord Mayor wants the state government to step in to end the debacle. Transport Minister Mark Bailey says he will work with local government to move the restaurant off the bikeway after the recent floods. In the recent southeast Queensland floods, the Brisbane River swept debris into the former restaurant, pushing the floor of the site upwards and partially onto the bikeway. The site has been vacant since the floating restaurant was swept down the river and crashed into the Goodwill Bridge in the 2011 floods. The main building, which remained at the Milton site, was inundated as authorities told the owner to let it sink during the floods more than a decade ago, and has since been vacant. The leaseholder of the site, Ken Alsop, had planned to reopen and operate a restaurant from the venue this year, and now is calling for government-funded cranes to move the building so it can be fixed and reopened. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 14 seconds 14's Drift restaurant floating down the flooded Brisbane River and smashing into a bridge on January 13, 2011. Mayor takes swipe at state government. Brisbane Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner posted on social media calling for an end to the decade-long Drift restaurant debacle, after the shell of the old restaurant was pushed onto the bikeway during the recent weather event. State government bureaucrats and the owner need to find a solution, he said. Drift was partially pushed onto the bicentennial bikeway during the 2022 floods. Minister hits back. But Transport Minister Mark Bailey responded on social media saying the mayor had approached him yesterday to ask for the state government to help remove the former Drift restaurant off the bicentennial bikeway. I responded last night that I'm happy to work with BCC to assist, he said. Let's get it done and drop the petty politics. Mr. Schrinner told ABC Radio Brisbane he thought the best thing for the site was to be demolished and start with something different, but said he thought Mr. Bailey would work with the council to help address the issue. The leaseholder of the site still has plans to reopen despite the damage. Leaseholder calls for cranes to move restaurant. Despite the damage the site suffered, Mr. Alsop still has planned to open a floating restaurant at the site. Mr. Alsop said he was calling for either state government or local government to fund cranes to move the site off the bikeway and onto poles, so it could then be rebuilt as a floating restaurant. He said work had already been done to reopen, with plans to fit out the restaurant in March this year. But this has happened. I need to get it back on its poles or be allowed to have it with 4 new poles and floating, Mr. Alsop said. He said he was still waiting for a payout for his claim as part of the 2011 flood victim class action. The former floating restaurant has been vacant since 2011. In 2021, the Queensland Government and state-owned operator Sunwater agreed to pay 2011 flood victims of a class action $440 million, half of the compensation owed, after a 2019 NSW Supreme Court decision found the Wivenhoe Dam had been carefully managed. State-owned dam operator Seekwater appealed the decision that it was liable for the remaining 50% of the liability for damages, and later won the appeal in 2021. But flood victims, represented by Maurice Blackburn, have sought special leave from the High Court to overturn that decision. It's a bit of an eyesore, says Premier. Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk told a media conference today the Mayor and Transport Minister had scheduled a meeting to discuss the issue tomorrow. We need a solution for this, she said. It's been sitting there for a long time, and it is a bit of an eyesore, so let's work through it and come up with a solution, she said. Loading.